Welcome to the first Fusion Friday. Okay, this is going to be an exercise where we just learn a whole bunch of different tools using Fusion 360. Okay, this week what we're going to do is we're just going to start by getting back into the basics of modeling shapes in Fusion 360, and we are going to model this shape right here. Okay, and our goal when we complete this shape is we're going to try to do this in the least amount of steps possible. If you feel confident that you can tackle this without the video, please try to do so. That would be great. However, if you don't know where to start, you could follow along with me as we take on this model here. So what I would recommend you do to make this process very streamlined is to actually make your window a full screen for both this OneNote or the image and also your Fusion. That way you can use your trackpad to just slide between the two desktops very easily. What we want to do is we want to just start by looking at the top down. What I want to do is in Fusion, I want to create a new sketch on the bottom plane here. So if I click create sketch and then click on the bottom plane, I'm now here. Now what I want to do is start with a rectangle that is the biggest portion of my shape. Okay, so for right now, I'm just going to start, if I'm looking at the top down, I would see a rectangle that's 180 units in length by 100 units in width. Okay, and our units for this, and you could always check this by clicking up here in document settings, all of my units are going to be in millimeters. Okay, so we'll start by just clicking on this 2-point rectangle tool and by drawing our rectangle. So something you could do, these little dialog boxes that pop up as you start to draw your rectangle with the dimension, if you actually just start typing the number you want. So I want 100, and then now I have a rectangle that's 100 units tall. And then if I press the tab key, it'll jump down to the bottom rectangle, and then I could type 180. Now I have my rectangle that is the base that I want. Okay. Going from there, I want to start to add this little U shape portion of the rectangle, right? And I'm not going to actually worry about adding the dimensions yet. I'm just going to worry about getting the rough general shape and then coming back and adding the dimensions. So I'm going to actually use the line tool for this and just start by clicking at that top point and just kind of drawing this boxy looking U. And again, I'm not going to make anything perfect just yet. I'm just going to try to keep the original shape. Okay, and the last thing that I want to add before I start to add my dimensions is this little circle here in the center. Okay, so I'm just going to start. Again, I'm not going to add the dimensions yet. I'm just going to start with a regular old circle and just draw it any size for now. I'll come back in and change the dimensions, but having this general shape as a skeleton really helps. Okay, now what I want to do is just moving from left to right, I just want to start it to add in the dimensions that I see. Okay, so I see this long portion of the rectangle is 120. So I'll just add a dimension just like that to lock it in at 120. So you just click the left line and the right line, and then it adds these dimension lines that says I want to make from here to here 120 millimeters. So we did that. Great. Now we want to go ahead and make the thickness of this U shape. Okay? What we can assume here from looking at this diagram is that this thickness here of 20 is uniform throughout this entire U shape. Since they don't give us another dimension directly right here, it's safe to assume that this portion of the part is 20 millimeters across. So any portion of our U in thickness, we'll click from there to there. This one's already locked in at 20, which is very convenient for us and may not be the case. From here to here, we will also make this 20 units. And from here to here, we will also make this 20 units. Okay, now we're starting to get a little closer to our shape. But again, we need to finish off adding our dimensions. So the next thing I see is that this little spacing here isn't actually given to me. So to find this, I'm actually going to have to do a little bit of algebra. So I'll start with my total length of the segment, which is 180 millimeters. And I know this portion here is 120. We put that in earlier. So we'll say that this 180 is equal to 120. And then this little segment here that we want to find, we'll just call that x for now. And we can assume that x is the same on this side and on this side over here. So we'll say that 180 equals 120 plus 2x. Okay? And then to figure out what our dimension x is, we can start by just subtracting 120 from both sides. Okay, and then we're left with 60 is equal to 2x. And then if we divide both sides by 2, we can see that x is equal to 30. Okay, and that is our dimension that we need to go in and plug into Fusion. Okay, so now we know that this little dimension x is 30, so we'll come back in with our dimension tool, and we will make this 30. Now, you see, we're really starting to come to shape here. Okay, we've got this little dimension that's 30. This right here, this is also 30. We can tell that this is fully constrained because, as you guys have probably noticed, as you enter in these dimensions, the lines in your Fusion model become black. And what that indicates is that you have completely dimensioned your part. Okay, but we've still got a few that are blue. So that means we need to add dimensions for them. Anything that's blue means that there is a missing dimension in Fusion. So we need to figure out this length here, the distance from this edge to this edge. And what we can see if we look at our part is that it actually extends all the way to the base, but we didn't necessarily draw it that way. However, we could come in and fix that real quickly with a constraint. Okay, there are some constraints up here, and if you don't see all of these up in this menu, you could click on this little drop-down bar. But we want to use one of the constraints called collinear. And what that does is if you click on this line and this line here, you can see it snaps the two lines together. Okay, so now we have that U shape. And we won't necessarily worry about this triangle yet. We'll come back in and we'll actually cut that away. It's easier to try to cut this from a different angle than to try to draw it in from the top. So that's what we'll do. So the last thing is just this circle here. So we see that this circle has a radius of 20. That's what this R20 means. However, typically in Fusion, you would use a diameter. So if the radius is 20, that means that our diameter of the circle is 40. So if we just click on the outside edge of the circle, we get our diameter constraint, and then we put it in as 40. And then the last thing we need, we see it's still blue though, because we need to show a dimension that this spacing here, we need to figure out the spacing of this circle relative to this little box that it's in. And we could assume that it's actually in the center of this box, okay? We see that it's 40 from this side, and they don't actually give us a direct dimension telling us that it's in the center. So we will have to assume that it is, in fact, in the center of this circle. So we'll go back and we'll add our dimension tool. Again, we know these two dimensions. If we click on the center of the circle in this line, we know that that is 40. And then this inside section of the circle, again, if we do algebra to figure that out, we could see that this center section is, in fact, 80 millimeters from this outline to this line. So if we want our circle to be centered, we would put this also at 40. Now we see that our thing is totally constrained. All the lines are black, so what we could actually do is we could finish the sketch, and now we can start to turn this in 3D. We're going to turn this shape 3D. So now that we're going up, we're going to start to import the dimensions from this section here. So this flatter section of our rectangle goes up 40 and the taller section goes up 100. So what we can do is we can use our little extrude tool and we could click on all the sections that are going up by 40 at once. So that would be this section, and this section. And then if we just type 40, we'll see that these shapes kind of become three-dimensional. Okay, but we also see that our sketch disappears. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to come back in on the browser over here. We could see where our sketch is labeled. So we'll start with our sketch and we'll reveal it. So that way we could see exactly what's going on. So then we'll come back in and we'll just make the last portion, this little U shape, we'll make that go up by 100. So now you see we have a pretty good start to our shape. We're still missing some key features, like we're missing this little U back here, we're missing these two slants, and this little cutout down here. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually create two additional sketches on the surface that we already created, and then just extrude away the parts that we don't need. You can use the extrude tool to create, but also to destroy something that you already have designed. So we'll start with this little box cutout and the little slant right here. Okay? So what I want to do is I want to create a new sketch right on this side surface. Okay, we'll create it right here for now. So what I'm going to start with is just the little rectangle cutout. So we'll use the rectangular tool and we'll just draw our rectangle, and then we come back in with our dimension tool and we add the dimensions that we need. We see that it's 20 units tall and 60 units across. So we'll do that, make it 20 by 60. Then we also have to add the spacing from side to side. So again, we can assume that this is in the center. So if we do this algebra again, we will find that this distance to this distance is equal to 20 units. Okay, now we have the little rectangle cut out. Now what we'll have to do is we'll have to draw in our little triangle here. However, you'll notice that if you try to draw a triangle in there, you might be able to get it to lock in. However, trying to draw sketches on surfaces that are not on the exact same plane as you're drawing on can be difficult. But Fusion has this tool called a project tool, and this tool is very, very valuable. So you can use the project tool by going to create, scrolling down to project, and then clicking this again. And then we can actually click on this side of our view. Click OK, and now what Fusion has done is it's actually created a reference rectangle. So we can come back in and draw in our little slant. Okay, now what we can do is we can actually take accurate dimensions based on the part that we already have. So let's do just that. So we see that from the top of the rectangle, or the top of the slant to the back of the part is 40 units, and this little bottom of the slant to this edge is 20 units tall. So we will come back in with our dimension tool, make this 40, and make this 20. Now you see both of our things are fully defined, so that means we are good to go. So we'll go ahead and we'll finish this sketch. And then using the extrude tool again, we'll come back in, we'll select this rectangle and this rectangle, and this little triangle that we made, excuse me. So then from there, we could actually just take this arrow and we could cut it all the way through until we need it. We know that this entire base of the portion is 180 units, so I'm going to cut it 180 units, 180 millimeters. And you just want to make sure that over here your operation is set to cut. Okay, so now we have that cut away easy peasy. Now the last thing we have to do is just add this little U. Okay, and to add this little U, we would actually want to use two shapes to create this. So we will create a sketch on this back portion, and we will start with a circle tool. And again, I'm not going to be too cautious on the dimensions just yet. So we'll use the circle tool, and then we will use actually a rectangle tool, and we'll just place it from there to there. So now you could kind of envision what we could do is we could cut out all of these shapes at once and then cut out that U. But again, we'll have to come in and dimension it first. So first thing, again, we're going to assume that this is in the center of our shape here because it doesn't directly tell us that. But we'll have to start with the diameter of the circle. So again, it gives us a radius 20 circle. So we'll make it a diameter of 40. And then it tells us that from the top to the bottom, it's 20 units. So that actually makes it very easy for us. If we go from so we'll start with our diameter, say that's 40 units. And then we'll say from top to bottom, it's 20. Okay, and then if we're going from the center, again, we figured out earlier that this entire length is 80. So we'll say from this side to this side is 40. Okay, now our circle is fully constrained. However, this rectangle is now starting to look a little off. So what we could do to fix this is we could start by making these lines tangent to our circle. So if we click on our tangent tool and we click this side of the rectangle in our circle, it snaps it so that this line and this circle come together at their exact point. So we'll do the same thing with that one. And now you see we have a fully defined little U cut out. So we could finish our sketch and then we can extrude these all at once. And again, you could click on multiple shapes at once. And now you see we have that full U cut out. And we could just extrude it back 20 units. And that's it. That is how you would create this final shape.